The 1-4-5 blues progression is pretty ubiquitous. It's all over the place. When you go to a jam session, you're playing a 1-4-5 blues progression. There are backing tracks everywhere. When you specifically use dominant chords for each one of those chords, the 1, the 4, and the 5, that suggests that there's a key change happening under each one of those new chords. Now, the pentatonic scale will work over this chord progression, as we all already know, but it falls woefully short for underlying that more sophisticated harmony as it passes by. Recently I did a target notes video, which is linked right here, and that was based on a major chord progression just using triads, just to sort of get the idea of target notes under our fingers, in our ears, in our brains. In the comment section of that video, Rob Rubino suggested that I expand on this idea and specifically apply it to the 1-4-5 progression using dominant chords. When you move from triads, when you expand your harmonic stack from root 3-5 to root 3-5-7, when you expand that stack, your harmonic library gets much, much bigger. And going from triads to this 7th chord starts to suggest this harmonic key change. And the harmonic information that changes the key is in the 7th of each one of those chords. So the way to start getting access to this melodic information is to track the 3rd and the 7th together as they voice lead through the chord progression. Okay, let's get started. This 3-7 line is basically looking at the 3rd and the 7 of the chords as they move in between each other. Let's just set up our key. We're in the key of A, and the chords for the 1-4-5 progression are going to be as follows. A7, A7 is our 1 chord, D7 is our 4 chord, and E7 is our 5 chord. Now, to find the 3rd and the 7 and these big honking chords is going to be a little more sort of difficult than I like. I like to strip away as much information as possible and just boil it down. It just so happens that the D and the G string are where the 3 and the 7 for all 3 of these chord shapes lives. So let's find those real quick. So here's our A7 chord, and on that D and the G string we find the 7 and the 3 of our A chord. When that chord changes to D7, now we have the 3rd and the 7 of D7. For the E7, 3rd and the 7 of E. So you've got A, D, and E. So you've got this crazy little chromatic tritone figure, and a tritone is basically splitting the octave in half. You've got this wacky little chromatic tritone thing that perfectly outlines the harmony. So, there's our A, there's our D, there's our E. We can just use this information in a loop to outline the changes. Here comes the E, D. Here it is again. I'm just mixing it up a little bit. But those notes, while they outline the chord structure and the key change, they're sort of too much. This is a really good exercise to get under your fingers, into your ears, and under, on the fretboard. But it's not very musical. I mean, it's musical because it's outlining the chords, but then as a structure, as a mechanism, it becomes too literal. So what we want to do now is add a few notes around it. So as I said before, each one of these chords suggests a key change. Each one of these being dominant chords really suggests it's the fifth of another key, but our ears really don't hear that because this progression is so ingrained. But now what we're going to do is add a few notes around this 3/7 line to help us get a little more variety outside of just the chord tones. So what we're going to do is basically add in a few scale tones on each side of these 3/7 lines, and basically the constraint will still be the D and the G string. We're going to add a 3-note per string figure that incorporates and sort of brackets this 3/7 line. And the way it's going to look, I could explain that it's Mixolydian and then it's Dorian and then it's Ionian, but I don't think we need that right now. I just want to show you what it's going to look like. And these are basically the scale tones around the 3/7 line that help outline the key. So here on the D string for the A7 chord, you have 4, 5, 7, and 4, 6, 7. When it changes to the D, now you have 4, 5, 7, and 4, 5, 7. Now the E chord is 4, 6, 7, and 4, 6, 7. So now let's look at all three of those as an example over this progression. Here's the A, D, A, D, back to A, to the E, D, A. Now add some bending in. You get the idea. Now we're basically using those chord tones and the scales around them to really harvest the harmonic information that's going on underneath us. So there's the idea of how to target that 3 and 7 through your 1-4-5 progression using dominant chords. There's a lot of information there, and really this is the start of another journey, which is like playing over the changes. As you increase the harmonic density, you can now start to add very, very interesting notes and really start to evoke harmonic tension at will. And and when you have control over creating and destroying or resolving harmonic tension, you're really in control of your musicianship in a way that you might not have been in the past. I've tabbed out all these examples there on my Patreon page. That's linked in the description below. If you need those and you go over there, I really appreciate the support. If you have questions, or if you're working on a chord progression that's unique, or you're wondering how to target notes in a more sophisticated chord progression, why don't you go ahead and put that in the comments so that I can look at it, and maybe I can put a video together using that specific example if there's a harmonic challenge in it that's very, very interesting. As always, I hope this helps. It's certainly helped me on my journey of playing through changes and playing over changes and trying to get control over the harmonic information that's happening in the chord progression below. I hope it helps you, and I'll see you next time.